For today's Destiny Friday video, I want to do something a little different. I want to talk about the role that variability plays in trading card games in terms of approachability, competitiveness, and overall enjoyment. It's something I believe Star Wars Destiny found a sweet spot on. Too little, the game appeals only to tryhards. Too much, the game becomes basically Monopoly. So today, let's talk about variability as it applies to Destiny, to Star Wars Unlimited, and why I think it needs to be present to at least some degree in every single game, even the competitive ones. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Star Wars Destiny folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and the Commando Cast, and happy Destiny Friday. Obviously, you can see from behind me, we're not in the studio, aka my office, but that doesn't stop Destiny Friday from happening. So, let's just cut to the chase, talking variability today. Now, why specifically do I want to talk about this today? Well, quite frankly, after Gen Con and all that, Unlimited is kind of the talk of the town in the Star Wars gaming world right now, which is completely fair, right? And most Destiny players are, without a doubt, looking at that and comparing it to Destiny and doing the whole shebang, right? So that's where I thought the discussion of variability really came to be relevant. And I suppose to a certain degree, this is kind of a larger discussion around gaming philosophy. I can completely grant that. But I wanted to specifically try and target this towards Destiny and how Destiny variability happened with Destiny and all the discussions around that. And then kind of how I see that applying to Unlimited, and based on some feedback also that I very specifically got from some people I really trust about playing the game at Gen Con. So anyway, without further ado, let's actually dive into this, right? So talking variability. Now, what do I mean by variability? Well, trading cards inherently have variability in them, right? Go back to the OG of the trading card games. You have Magic the Gathering, in which your basic resource system is your mana, your lands, right? Your basic resource system is your mana, but your lands are what produce said resource, right? So you have this problem of variability that still exists today in Magic, where you can draw bad, you can draw too many lands early, you can draw not enough lands early, not lands of the right color early. Obviously, they've got some power curve things in there. It was like, well, if I'm playing a 2-color deck and a card requires 2 colors, then it can have a little more power curve because of the inherent difficulty of making that happen, and so on, so on. Now let's move to Star Wars Destiny. Now, Star Wars Destiny is a trading card game where you draw cards from your deck, and those cards, generate dice, or at least some of them do, where you have to roll in order to do what you want to do, and sometimes you can roll good, and sometimes you can roll blanks, right? Sometimes you roll threes, sometimes you roll blanks. We've all been there on both sides of the metaphorical coin, in this case. Both sides of the die, on all 6 sides of the die, in this case. See how we can laugh here. All right. Now, one of the major complaints, right? If there's a lot to unpack here, so just stick with me, right? One of the reasons that Destiny struggled early, when it was released in, it was November 2016, if I have my dates correct. What had happened there was welcome to, the first set. Got my fab brain on. But the first set, Awakenings, was underprinted according to demand, but not according to pre-orders. So what happened there was all these gaming companies looked at it and they're like, it's double variability, it's got kid-looking dice that are big and chonky, and we don't think it's going to succeed. So they didn't pre-order it. And then FFG being FFG, because they, will step over a dime to save $1, right? They just didn't print a lot of it. And then it released, and all of a sudden by Christmas time, basically, the game was sold out, and we had to wait until early spring or so to get more of it. Now, the reason I bring that up is because the reason people didn't think the game was going to succeed was they didn't like the concept of the inherent double variability, I guess, or at least the promise of the double variability. Now, I counter that. So, I mean, that's fair, right? It's a fair concern. Now, I counter that and I say that I think actually what made Destiny a success for as long as it was and still is actually Destiny really shot the sweet spot on managing variability on both sides. Now, we had a lot of the, competitive gamers, and by this I'm talking to people that basically do this as their job, more or less. They steered clear of it because they're like, well, why am I going to go to some big tournament and get rolled off the table by some plebe or noob or whatever the kids are saying these days, right? And, Destiny was never really designed to be an uber competitive game. Yet, if you really go back and look at the history of Destiny, the same people, by and large, were topping those tournaments. So you had a game where there was an inherent variability into it, double variability, really, but yet the same people were continually topping these tournaments. Now, maybe it wasn't the same person every time winning, but you had the same group of people, by and large, in there. So how is that possible, right? If variability is a super bad thing from a competitive standpoint, how is it possible that your Bobby Sapphires and, as such, Jonathan Magnusons continued to dominate the game at very high range? Joe Cologne's. I mean, I could go, the list goes on, right? And you look at today, like you have someone like Liquid Snake who continually is doing very well atop the charts. How is that possible if the game is nothing but rolling dice, right? So again, I think Destiny really shot that sweet spot. And to kind of build on that, I think the other side of that sweet spot is the approachability of it. One of the reasons when I sold this to my wife, not my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, Amy, I was like, hey, let's try this. I saw Destiny, I got into Destiny to begin with because I was like, this is a game that I can teach someone who's never played a card game how to play before. And it's a game to where Amy had never been to a tournament before, a card game tournament before. She never played a card game. Like, it wasn't even a thing she was aware of. And I was like, we can go play and you're going to have fun because, like, maybe you'll win a game. Like, you can roll good, right? And you never have this. Destiny, again, it creates the situation in which you had a chance, right? And it was that anyone can win mentality, even though I would argue from a pure competitive standpoint, that's actually not the case, right? I mean, sure, you could go in and roll blanks every single time and they could roll threes every single time. Again, it's happened to all of us. But by and large, over the course of a tournament, a career, whatever, folks who are better at playing the game are better at playing the game. But there's a very important part of that approachability thing is that you never feel like you're out of the game. Okay, now let's go ahead and pop over to the Star Wars Limited part of this discussion. And I had feedback on the video from 2 weeks ago from Brenton, first off, and then also Ben. So thank you to you both for your very detailed thoughts on the game after demoing it at Gen Con. And both of them had given really solid, so they're both folks that I've played Destiny with in the past, people who I really trust. They were very good at the game. I really trust their knowledge on it, right? So that's why I'm specifically quoting these two. One of their concerns was that they felt like once you were out of it, you couldn't get back into it. And again, I'm talking about Unlimited. And I think that's a big deal in gaming because if you know, and that's why I made the comment in the intro about Monopoly. Monopoly, by and large, if you were to run like a simulation of like 100 Monopoly games, whoever rolls highest out of the gate and gets around the board first and grabs up the most, or whoever gets around the board first and grabs up the higher properties, right? Because that's what you do in Monopoly. When you go around the board, you basically buy everything you land on the first time, at least on the board. So whoever rolls higher, statistically, is going to get the better properties, right? So again, if you're going to sit down and play Monopoly, like, why don't we all just roll two-sided dice? Whoever rolls higher, we high-five them, we all have a beer, and then we go play something else. And, right? I mean, I'm sorry, but that's how the game works. So to that extent, whoever gets out early, whoever gets the better draw early, because again, it's a TCG, there's inherent variability in the TCG, whoever gets the better draw early it's really hard to come back from that. And I think that's the feedback. Again, that's the trusted feedback I got from folks on Unlimited, at least from the demo they had. Again, there's a lot more to be revealed and all that stuff. And I'm not, to be clear, this is not a poo-poo on Unlimited thing. I'm just trying to put things in perspective of, is the game better for competitive? Probably is, because your better players will be able to lock folks down. But does that make it a better game? I don't think so. Because especially something like a Star Wars property or something like that, you want younger folks to play it. You want folks who are new to gaming to play it. And that approachability, which Destiny has, I think really matters. Now, kind of the last thing I'm going to have on this is two things, right? There's the playing your outs, and then there's crowd cheer moments, okay? And these are things that, again, as you guys obviously know, or you folks, obviously know, being on here, I'm very into Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood is a very well-designed game, but there is minimal variability in Flesh and Blood. In fact, much of the fundamental design of the game was to really fix a lot of the problems that other TCG, and by problems, I say, is it a problem? I don't know. I mean, it is in Magic and stuff, right? But Flesh and Blood has fixed a lot of them. I had the wrong quotes in the wrong spot there. They fixed a lot of the problems that other games have. And in that, they've really reduced the variability. And one of the problems, I think, and this is a legit statement, I think one of the problems that Flesh and Blood has is that you kind of know who's going to win the game maybe about halfway through the game, unless someone makes a mistake. And again, that's why the competitive people, like uber competitive tryhards, they really like that type of thing, because they're just like, well, I'm smarter than you, I'm better at the game than you, I should win. And fair enough, right? Fair enough. But does that make the game better? I don't think it does make the game better, right? And again, I'm obviously biased, because you all know that I think Destiny's one of the greatest games ever made. But it's about shooting that sweet spot. And to my point, like the things I mentioned, playing your outs and the crowd cheer moments, I've never seen a Flesh and Blood game come down to 19 people standing around and something happening and everyone go, oh! It's never happened. I've never seen it happen. But in Destiny, how many times has that happened at your table where Andrew has to roll 5 damage or he loses? Most of the time it doesn't happen, but when it does, oh my God, amazing moment, right? It happens. It happens in Destiny, and it's amazing. And again, if you're that competitive player, you hate that. You're like, oh my God, you had a 1 in 6 and you got it. You're a worse player than me. Brr. I get it. I do. But don't we think that makes the game, at least, I'm not saying it makes the game better. That's not what I'm saying for any Flesh and Blood people who've made it this far, which is like none of them. I'm not saying that makes the game better. It's different. But in terms of being approachable and being fun, having that variability, having those explosive oh moments, that makes a game really great. And without some degree of variability, you can't have that. And then last on, like I said, playing your outs, there's a tactic of the more variability you have, the more you have to make risk-reward decisions. Risk-reward decisions, which is a very big thing in Star Wars Destiny. It's probably not, it is the biggest thing in Star Wars Destiny, aside from being able to count and resource manage, right? But being able to decide, is this card in my hand worth a reroll? Is this right? What are the chances? What do I get out of this, right? It's very mathematical, but it's also very intuitive, because how many times playing this game do you make the wrong mathematical decision, but you're like, I'm behind, and if I don't get ahead, I'm going to lose, and it doesn't matter if I lose by more. Let's go, baby. And that playing your out, right? Taking the risk to crawl back into the game, I don't think that makes you a bad player. I think it makes you a good player, right? So while your competitive people may look at something like that and say, you know what, I don't like that Andrew can get lucky and get back in. It's like, well, but I don't think you're appreciating the fact that Andrew risked losing the game to try and get back in. And then again, who wants to sit there and play a 50-minute game in which you know you're going to lose 30 minutes before you're going to lose it, right? And the minutes thing doesn't have to matter. You can put percentages on it, whatever. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. But if you get your X-Wing down before I get my TIE Fighter down, and I know that I'm now not going to be able to keep my TIE Fighter in play, what's the point of playing, right? At least there's got to be a chance that like my guy can dodge or something, right? So I think this is something really worth considering as we look towards not only the future of Destiny, but as we start to look towards other games and how that fits in. And I think it's something that, this is something I've wanted to talk about for a while and kind of some other facets, and it's just really never materialized. Life happens. But variability matters. And I'm not saying, again, I use my Monopoly example, right? It can't be just variability. Otherwise, why are we here? But having something that is just, I drew this first and now I win, that's not good either. And I think Destiny really has managed that sweet spot of all of it, even from a competitive standpoint to a certain degree, but more so from an approachability standpoint. So anyway, folks, I don't know how long I've been talking, probably way too long to prove my point, but hopefully this is something that at least inspired some thought. I'd love to get your comments below on what you're thinking about it as well. Again, we continue to love Destiny. It's still here. The folks that love it continue to love it. And I think that's why. And I think games that don't have at least the proper level of variability have a risk of just kind of hitting that ceiling and not being able to attract other folks. So anyway, that's my piece for today. Again, I'd love to get your comments, the likes and subs or whatever if you made it this far. Actually, if you made it this far, give me a actually, don't give me a mall. Just give me a normal comment. Tell me what your thoughts are. That'll do it. Happy Destiny Friday. Go Commando.